Today, we're going to go deep on an investigation into one of the largest government programs in Australia. It has a budget so massive it's actually hard to believe. This is the story of the National Disability Insurance Scheme, or NDIS, and the really serious questions being asked about where billions of taxpayer dollars are actually ending up.
Okay, let's just start with the number because it is a big one. The annual budget for the NDIS is a staggering $52 billion. To really get your head around a figure like that, just think of it this way.
That's right, this one single program costs more than the nation's entire defense budget. The sheer scale of that spending, well, it brings us to the most important question at the heart of all this. Answering that question is surprisingly tricky. A team of independent investigators tried to follow the money, and what they found was a system with some pretty serious vulnerabilities. So how's it supposed to work? Well, the NDIS funds support services for people with disabilities. But here's the key detail. The money doesn't go directly to the individuals. It goes to approved service providers. And that one simple fact is absolutely central to everything that's about to unfold. Now, you might think looking into a government program would be pretty straightforward. But in Australia, it turns out it comes with some enormous risks. This quote really gets to the heart of the challenge. See, unlike the US with its First Amendment, Australia's legal system makes it incredibly risky to make allegations, even if they're true. The threat of a financially crippling defamation lawsuit is often enough to silence investigations before they even get started. But despite those risks, the investigators headed to Western Sydney, where they noticed a huge concentration of NDIS providers. And almost right away, they started finding things that, well, they just didn't add up. They found businesses with expired website security and invalid business numbers. They found dozens of providers all listed to a single office building. But here's the thing. When they visited during business hours, the doors were always locked and the phones just went straight to voicemail. It raised a really basic question. Are these even real businesses?
The investigators knew they needed more than just a bad feeling. So after getting a tip from an insider about how invoices were being inflated, they decided to set up a sting operation to see the system in action for themselves. The plan was simple. They rented a small apartment, made it look lived in, and then they hired a registered NDIS cleaning service to do a pretty simple job. And here is exactly what they found. The cleaners showed up with no equipment and did just 25 minutes of some very light surface-level cleaning. But they claimed that under so-called NDIS rules, they had to bill for a minimum of 2 hours. And check this out. The first invoice came in at $236. But when the investigators confronted the provider and pointed out that there is no 2-hour minimum NDIS rule, boom, the bill was immediately changed to just $24.80. That's an inflation of nearly 10 times the actual cost. From there, the investigation took a much more dangerous turn. The team started looking into a provider that had already been permanently banned for fraud, only to find something pretty shocking. So, a company called M&F Disability Services was banned for life. But then, a new company, Sunny Days Care, opened up in the exact same spot. Investigators found it was using the same phone number and even the same accountant as the banned company. So they went to the office to ask some questions. The reception was hostile from the second they walked in. Before they could even really ask a proper question, they were just told in no uncertain terms to leave. And then things escalated quickly, from verbal to physical. As the confrontation spilled out onto the public sidewalk, one of the people from the business allegedly grabbed and broke the investigators' glasses. And it all ended with this direct threat, which just highlights the real-world dangers of trying to hold these providers accountable. I mean, that violent reaction to just a few simple questions was, to say the least, very telling. Look, these aren't just a few isolated incidents. What the investigation suggests is that they're symptoms of a much bigger problem. A system that was designed to prevent fraud, but is now completely and utterly overwhelmed. Just take a look at these numbers. Out of 7,000 fraud tip-offs received by the agency in charge of the NDIS, only 16 have resulted in prosecution. That's a prosecution rate of less than 0.25%. The gap between reported fraud and prosecuted fraud is, well, it's a chasm. And this quote from the NDIS integrity chief himself is maybe the most shocking revelation of all. He told the Australian Senate that the volume of known fraud is so massive that the country's court system literally doesn't have enough judges to handle the caseload. The problem is just too big to prosecute. Which brings us to our final lingering question. This investigation reveals a system where accountability seems nearly impossible. So if the official channels are totally gridlocked and independent investigators face legal threats and physical violence, who is left to make sure that this $52 billion program is actually serving the people it was designed to help?